Hi guys, welcome back to Econ Time with SK. So grab your notebooks, your favorite cup of coffee, and let's get started. Hi guys, so in today's lecture, I'm going to be introducing the concept of the production possibility frontier, which is also sometimes called the production possibility curve, so PPC. Okay, so there are three main things that this lecture is going to explore. Number one, we're going to find out what exactly is the PPF. Okay, so what is the PPF? We're going to learn terms like productive efficiency and inefficiency. All right. After that, we're going to move on to understanding shifts and rotations of the PPF. So when does the PPF shift and when does it rotate? And what's the difference? And finally, we're going to look at why is it that the PPF is usually concave to the origin? So essentially, we're going to be I'm trying to understand why the PPF is shaped the way it is. Okay, so moving forward, before we get into what the PPF is, first I'm going to just go over this very simple diagram, which gives us an overview of the economy. Right, so it gives us an idea of the different players in the economy, what they're doing, the flow of goods and services, how the money is flowing, and all of that. So, firstly, this is just a very simple, oversimplified picture of the economy. Okay, so here we're showing that there are two actors in the economy. All right, households and firms. And you know what? There are actually two markets as well. Okay. Markets is where buyers and sellers come together. So what markets are there? Firstly, there's the goods and services market. And then there's also the market for factors of production. I'm going to call it FOP. So for future reference, whenever I use the word FOP, essentially I'm talking about factors of production. Okay, I'm gonna tell you in a bit what that's all about. Okay, so if you're looking at this diagram here, let me just zoom in for your convenience. All right, so first you're seeing that what is the interaction between firms and households? Well, firms produce goods and services, right? Once they produce these goods and services, what they do is they take it and they basically take it to the market, right? For goods and services. That's where they take it. And then what do the households do? The households actually go and they buy these goods and services, right? So the flow of goods is basically from the firm. The goods are flowing from the firm to the households. That's the idea. Okay. And when the households are getting the goods and services, they're obviously not getting it for free. They're spending some money on it, right? So this is what we call household expenditure. So the money that the households have to buy the goods and services, they give it to the firms. When the firms get this money, the technical term for it is called revenue. So basically what we're showing is that when the household buys goods and services from the firm, while the goods flow from while the goods are flowing from the firm to the households, the money actually flows in the other direction. Obviously, it goes from the household to the firms. That's where the dollar flow is, and this is the flow of goods and services, right? So that's how it works. Okay, on the other hand, what's this input market, right? So the market for inputs essentially is, what are the inputs? I told you another name for them is factors of production, right? So actually, this is what the factors of production are. Factors of production is land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. So what are all these words? All right, labor, of course, is when you go and, like a computer engineer or a farmer. It's all different forms of labor, okay? Land, on the other hand, land can be farmland. It can be rivers and seas. It can be hills, So land doesn't just mean flat land. It can be any natural resources the country has. So in our, if it's got oil, it's got gas, it's got coal, all of this falls under land. Okay. Then what is capital? Now, when you see capital, please don't confuse it. So basically, what I'm trying to say is when you see the word capital in accounting or some business subject, you may think it's money. But in economics, capital, when we say capital, we don't mean money. What we actually mean is this is machinery. All right, so whenever you see the word capital, think machines. All right, so basically, think of it as anything, or okay, think of it as tools used to produce goods and services. All right, so a hammer could be capital, a spade could be capital. So anything that is going and helping you to produce goods and services. So capital is something that you combine with labor and land in order to produce your finished good. Okay. And finally, we come to the word entrepreneur. So what do we mean by entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is the guy who's bringing the land, labor, and capital together. All right. So let's just write it out. Oops. So entrepreneur, which is a very difficult word, hard to spell, hard to pronounce, is basically, in a way, this is basically the guy who brings land, labor, and capital together, right? To produce goods and services. Okay? Now, don't, again, when you're thinking entrepreneur, wait. Do not confuse it with like the CEO, because sometimes, the CEO is hired to run the operation, but think of it more as, the entrepreneur is also somebody who has the creativity. Like think of startups, right? Whoever came up with an idea to start that company, he's decided this is how I'm going to combine land, labor, and capital. So that's what essentially entrepreneur is. Okay, don't limit it to just thinking of a CEO or a CEO of a company. Okay. All right, so that roughly gives you an idea of the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. Okay, so now the households, essentially, from the households, you're going to get these land, labor, capital. Okay, right. So the households are in possession of land. They may have a flat that they want to rent out. They may just have some, you know, জাস্ট জমি, যেটা বলি তার জমি আছে, এটা এখন সে ডিসাইড করবে যে এটা কি সে রেন্ট করবে ফ্যাক্টরিকে, নাকি সে এই জায়গাটায় মাছ চাষ করবে, কি করবে, রাইট? Sometimes lands are given out on a contractual basis. So the households are in possession of land. All right, they're also in possession of labor, obviously, because they are the ones who will go and work in the factories or the different companies that are there. So they also are providing the labor. And then, of course, they are also in possession of the capital, and this is where you're gonna get. So the household basically is the source of all the factors of production. Okay, so what they do is they've got this land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. They take this to the input market, and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm ready to work. Is there anybody who wants to hire me, right? Or they can be like, hey, I've got this piece of land. And is there anybody who would like to rent it, maybe open a shop here or something, right? So they've got the factors of production, but it doesn't have much value if you just sit around holding on to it. You have to go and exchange it in the market, right? So they take it to the market for inputs. Now, in the market of inputs, then what the firm does is it actually uses the factors of production to produce the goods and services. right? So it uses the factors of production as raw material, labor, capital, etc. It just uses all of that to produce goods and services. But of course, the firms cannot take this from the households for free, right? So এটার বিনিময়ে তারা householdকে কি দেয়? Well, if you're labor, then you're going to get wages. On capital, there's interest. On land, there's profit. Rent. For entrepreneurs, there's profit. So all of this flows back to the households. All right. So this is how this is. So this inner triangle that you're seeing, this orange triangle, this is about the flow of dollars, how the money flows. And then the outside triangle, which was initially in blue, but now in red, this basically is showing you the flow of goods and factors of production. Okay. So this roughly gives you an overview of what the economy looks like, the different actors that are there, and the different markets that we're dealing with. Remember, markets is essentially where buyers and sellers come together. And there's this exchange of goods and services or exchange of inputs in return for money. All right, so that pretty much ends the first part of this video. And then in the next video, we are going to be introducing the production possibility curve. All right, guys, I shall see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.